Hi, friends. Welcome. Today is the Winnowing Flame Series discussion by Jen Williams. I am joined with two lovely booktubers, Elle and Joanna, and I will let them introduce themselves before we get into it.
Hello, everybody. I'm Elle from the channel Elliot Brooks, and I really love this series. I'm really excited to actually talk about it with other people.
And hello, I'm Joana from the channel Joana Sousa, and I am also very excited to talk about it because I love this series so much. I just finished it today, and I'm very excited.
Yeah, your thoughts are so fresh.
Yeah, they're very fresh.
Well, I was really, because I kept thinking, oh man, has she not finished it yet? Because I was like, she's gonna have a lot of feelings when we get to talking about it.
Yeah, I saved it for that reason, so I couldn't heal yet.
And it requires them, I guess. I mentioned that the only other series ending that really made me feel the same way was the end of Mistborn, where you're just like, what?
Yep.
I don't. And I think you were saying that you had a book hangover as well, that you were kind of sort of having one after, because you just are like, what do I even do with my life now? It's not just a
Nothing.
book hangover. It's kind of like a crisis in your life.
I went to the forest for 1.5 hours. That's what I did.
You did what?
I went to the forest for 1.5 hours.
That's the way to do it. Just remind yourself.
I cried a little.
Yeah. Oh, I cried a little too. Yeah.
There were so many times. There was one moment that was not the end, but it was in book 3. It was just a line between two characters, and I almost cried. I had to stop reading for a second. I'm like, oh no, this book is going to destroy me. And I don't want to, but I don't want to say too much, but basically it's like where one character refers to another character essentially as family. And it's like, I know who you are kind of moment. Again, we'll talk about it in spoilers, but oh my gosh, that part, so good.
There's so many good parts. I mean, the tropes in this are good, and definitely, obviously, found family is like one of the most, I don't know, I love the found family aspect. It was so believable. It was so hard fought and hard won. Ugh, it was just.
And all due to the character vintage, to like being realistic. She kind of was the mom of everybody of the group.
The glue, yeah.
Everybody kind of figures, but without her, they would be lost.
She's awesome. I like that she calls everyone darling. Darling, like someone who just tried to kill him. Oh, darling, it's fine. She's so cute. I love it.
She's the best. They're all I mean, when I reviewed the series, I was trying to think like, okay, well, what might be some things people wouldn't like about this series? And I was trying to, the characters can bicker and be frustrating and things like that. But somebody ended up commenting, they're like, you should mention that Tor is the worst as being a reason people might not like it. I was like, what? But that's why I love him, because he is kind of for so long. You're just like, come on, man. He cares too much about his shirts and the material, and he's kind of a snob. But at the same time, I'm like, that's why I love him.
But when you don't like, what's his face? You don't like Adolin for those reasons, but you like Tor.
Well, Tor, I feel like changes. I don't mind when men in books care about their clothing. It's not so much that, but it was just like Tor is so obnoxious, but everybody knows it. Everybody's like, oh, Tor. Well, that's Vintage's reaction to him. Other characters are like, this guy. So
it's endearing, though. Like, you're endeared by him. You're like, God, just so annoying, but it's cute.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And I think a lot of his more frustrating traits are also sort of hiding. Like, he cares about these little things because there's such dark, heavy, sad, tragic things that he could focus on. So instead he's focusing on, oh, this was my best shirt when they're fighting and stuff. But really, you're really sad about basically your entire race dying. It's not really funny, but I mean, it's really
as it would be. Yeah. I think maybe one thing that people. Oh, sorry, go for it.
Oh, I just said he's emotional and he tries to hide it. That's like the whole premise. That's why it's endearing, because it's relatable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I was gonna say, I think if you could have something maybe that people wouldn't like, I could see people who like maybe everything to be very explained, like this is why the magic system exists and why these are all the rules and this is this. Maybe those people wouldn't like this because for a very long time you're just like, I'm just along for the ride.
Yep. The first book The first book especially, I think you were so in the dark for so long, and I have I had tabs where I'm like, okay, this is where they explain stuff. I might need to refer back to this kind of a moment.
Yeah.
But it was always so interesting because the world kind of already existed, and you would get explanations to why the world was the way it was, but then everybody's in the dark about these previous wars and what's going on with them. And so discovering that, as well as kind of how it goes alongside the explanations for world building traits, I thought was executed well. But you definitely are in the dark, and if you don't enjoy the characters and you're in the dark, I could see why this first one wouldn't be for you. And the third one gets very out there. You kind of just have to go with it, I think. I mean, they all are really out there, right? It's a very strange series, but super unique.
I do think if you like, which you were saying, Elle, that it made you feel, the emotions made you feel like Mistborn. But I think, and I won't spoil, Ali, because I know you haven't read the last one yet. You just read Well of Ascension. But I do feel like if you like Mistborn, there's things that you will like in this one as well. Like the whole mystery, and there's a greater thing going on. And some of the aspects of the last book of this one remind me of the last book in Mistborn. So.
The progression of the stakes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And on that note, because I know neither of you have read the Broken Earth series, if you like the Broken Earth series with like the fantasy, like sci-fi combination and the mystery and really not, and just being dropped in, really not knowing how the world works or how the magic works, then I think you'll like this series. It's definitely, I feel like they're similar in that aspect.
I want to say, just in case viewers don't know, that each of us tried to match our makeup to the book covers, and yours I feel like are all especially really vibrant, pretty. So I just want both of your looks look really nice. I want people to notice that little detail you put in.
We can see your purple very clearly as well, and also you have like a purple toned pink lip, so that's really nice. I like the tone.
You really match the book.
Yeah.
I tried to, so I was looking at my closet and I had like a truly purple sweater, but I'm like, no, I got to match like really well. And then I don't actually have a lipstick this color, so I was like putting eyeshadow on my lips and then tried to like mix it.
I thought about that in the latest video. I was like, maybe she'll do the trick again with the eyeshadow.
Very significant, to the books for sure.
Yeah,
that would match them in this chat.
It combines my favorite things, reading and makeup.
Exactly.
I know.
Same.
It's so fun. It's so fun.
We're creative ladies here.
Absolutely. And plus, my favorite book was Poison Song, so I feel like I was like, I need to do green. It has to be green today.
It was such a good book. I will say for me, well, that takes us.
I was just going to ask. I think that you maybe had that as a prompt for us to talk about which book was our favorite and why. So I if you want to go into non-spoiler reasons why, I'm very curious to see why the third book is the one that stood out the most for you.
Sure. When we go into that, I will definitely tell you. I don't know
put
if
it on.
there's any other spoiler-free things we want to talk about first before we move on to the spoiler section.
Did we want to kind of give an overview of the plot or attempt to for anyone, or do you feel like people would already kind of know if they 8.5 minutes in?
It's hard to talk about this spoiler-free, and the thing is, the synopsis in the back of Ninth Reign doesn't make any sense until you read the book, because you don't know what Ebora is, you don't know what the Jurelia are, you don't know who Tor and Vintage and why they're looking for the artifacts they're looking for. So it's almost like I feel like it's better to go into this blind, and a lot of bookworms like to go into things blind. So I mean, we can, if you guys have a good way of putting it, I'm all ears. But
I think kind of coming at it from Tor's side of things helps sort of, I mean, and he's the opening of the story, right? Well, kind of. Another character related to him is the opening of the story, but his whole thing is that his race of people were these elves that were near immortal, and they had this tree that they fed off of, which I always think sounds so bizarre, that they would feed off the sap of this magical massive tree, and they kind of worshipped it, and then the tree has essentially died and they're losing that immortality. And so a history of the land is that eventually the Eborans turned to human blood to try to preserve that near immortality, and that created this plague basically through their people. And now one of our characters, Tor, is one of the only people left. And this ancient race of people, despite their tension with humans, well-earned tension, I must say. But with that tension, there's some issues with the fact that there are these cycles of war that you kind of hear about, and it's affected the world, but humans don't really know much about these previous wars. The only people that really would know are the Aborans, but because they've mostly died out, now nobody really knows the secrets to these wars. And they don't know if war is going to come again. And if it does, there's nobody to guide them anymore. It always sounds like a fever dream when I describe it, but it's so good. It's so different. Even the synopsis, I think, kind of gives away just how different it is.
Yeah.
For sure. And then there's also the witches, the fell witches. They're like, they consume energy around them to produce fire, basically. And they are therefore a bit feared also. And people in the land kind of try to put all these witches in one place. And they use the witches to produce a drug that then gives them money. And that's kind of like the other side coming in from Noon's point of view. That's kind of it. That's
their fire, it's a specific kind of fire that gets used for weaponry, I believe. Like specific kinds of weapons that are forged through the fire of the witches. And again, all these details that are so like, what? And so one of our characters is somebody who's kind of been held against her will to be in this place where it's kind of like slavery, right? They force these people to work in these not great conditions and live in not great conditions. And the back of the book sort of leads you to believe that all these different characters are going to come together. But you really are sort of seeing these different threads for quite a while before everything seems like it's going to be connected.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
So do we want to do spoiler free? Why is the series so unique, and why should people pick it up and put it at the top of the TBR?
For all the reasons we just described.
Yeah, we did talk about why it's so unique. I just haven't read anything like it before, and it's got like familiar tropes, so it feels familiar, but the story and the plot line aren't familiar. So,
I will say,
oh, go ahead.
Go for it. No, go for it.
Okay, I think I saw in some kind of synopsis or marketing for it or something that it was described, I think, as a mix of Jay Kristoff and Robin Hobb, and I'm like, it feels like neither of those things. So maybe if you smush, because those things are so different, and I think that just goes to show there really isn't an apt comparison for this series, because it's not like those things.
No, not at all.
At all. But I guess the point is those things are so drastically different that maybe if you smush them together, you would kind of get this. But I think, like you said before, the way in which the stakes are raised with each book, in that way, the arcs pacing across the trilogy does remind me of Mistborn, but not the plot and not the antagonistic forces and things. And the characters, I always end up describing it as if Geralt from Witcher was really vain and self-absorbed, and if Vin from Mistborn was a witch, and then if Indiana Jones was an awesome like this woman who's also really kind and lovely and sort of, she's strangely, I think, got the most resilience out of everyone. She's not the most powerful, but she's the one that holds everybody together. She's the one that kind of pushes through, and she has her emotions. I mean, it's not that she's without them, but she feels her feelings, and then she's like, all right, I felt them, now time to move on. Whereas Tor's like repressing things, and Noon is just angry all the time.
Tor's like a mix of Geralt and Kaladin with the depression. You know, he's like, no, I'm sad. I'm going to be sad. So
in certain aspects, in certain moments, he does for sure wallow a little bit. I think Kaladin is somebody who, even when things are going well, which is rare for him, but even when things are going well, depression is just something that is there. Whereas Tor's, I think, is more based off of his conditions. But again, that's like what we were saying. He's endearing because he tries so hard to focus on the most random and unimportant of things. And sometimes he doesn't pick the best things to care about, but it's like better than whenever you, well, I don't want to give away spoilers just yet. I know we're not talking spoilers quite at this moment, but I think that I know from talking before we started that the character Noon, there's definitely a great arc with that character, but I really enjoyed Tor's arc so much. I just where he starts and what he represents, and I really, and again talking about, I knew this would happen as soon as I started talking. I knew I just wouldn't stop, and like my brain would work too quick for what I'm saying. So I'm sorry if this is impossible to follow, but I just think that his character type of that person who starts out kind of more involved with themselves, but then they start to care about other people, or they don't want this burden that's placed on them, sort of thing. We see that all the time, and usually that character type can frustrate me because I'm like, okay, we know you're going to end up doing stuff, right? So just get there already. But I didn't mind it with him. I really enjoyed his journey, to put it in a kind of cheesy way.
Because it felt organic, right? It wasn't like he wasn't forced and he came to his own conclusions. The other thing I will say about this, because we're discussing like plotline and characters, is that like as a somewhat selfish reader, this has both a really good plot and really good character-driven parts. So for the plot lovers, you're going to find the character-driven parts to be a little slow, but they're important for the plot. And everything within this series is really interwoven, from the world building to the plot to the character arcs to the atmosphere. So you can't really separate one from the other. Like in a lot of series, the world building and the magic system, like we've said, is very obvious. Like here is exactly what this is, and it happens in the beginning. And then the character arcs are like distinct from the plot line because they have to grow in order to do things. But in this one, it's really very interwoven. So I do want to say that if you like character-driven novels or plot-driven novels, this has both. But just know that as if you're one or the other, because you're going to have parts that you don't like because of that.
Yeah.
That's a great point. I'm for sure more of a, I think I'm a character-driven reader who appreciates when the story is good. So I guess like you said, selfishly, I want it all, but I'll always take better characters over an interesting story. But I think that you're right in the moments. I think the second book every now and then got a little heavy with the plot, or the plot just moved kind of slow.
Yes.
And in those moments, I was like, can we have some character moments to sort of make me care a little bit more in these parts? Yeah.
That was my problem too.
I think that what was nice about the pacing is whenever I would maybe start to get a little, it really was more so the second book, but if I did start to get, I guess you could say, bored in certain parts, it didn't last long. Like something came up where I'm like, whoa, wait, what's that? I really appreciated it.
Yeah, I agree. I had problems with the second one. In like the first half, there was some like more boring parts, but overall I still enjoyed what I was reading. It just wasn't like the regular pacing or the regular way that the rest of the books are.
So. I will say something that I think is also really cool is that this mixes, we talked about it a little bit, how it mixes multiple genres. So you have fantasy and sci-fi for sure, but you also have horror aspects. So I think it's actually a very good season to read in the fall, and especially the last book, it mentions autumn at some points. And so I was like, it's such a good season book for the season, or series for the season, because of the horror aspects. And it's really like sometimes a bit disgusting, but I feel like bugs or spiders.
That was, and I feel a little bad, so maybe this is my opportunity to remedy this, but somebody mentioned in a comment to my review, I'm surprised you didn't mention the amount of like gross bug stuff in this. And I was like, I didn't realize that was something I should, and I get disgusted by bugs a lot. Just all bugs, I'm not a fan. I know people like ladybugs and butterflies, but I'm like, they just have pretty wings. They're still gross. So I definitely do not like bugs. And if you're like that, I got through those series. There's going to be parts where you're like, oh, geez. But I think that it adds to I mean, it really makes you feel so many, not just emotions, but in those parts, you're like, ugh, like, is it on me? You know, it gives you that feeling. So it's written well. It's not just gross to be gross.
And in that same aspect, the first one I thought was pretty creepy, especially their little adventure through Sarn. I was creeped out a lot of the time. So if you wanted something creepy, not just horrifying, but creepy, the first one's definitely good for that too. For this,
I thought the second one too, especially there's a like non-spoilers, I'll just say an island plot line in the second one, and that one had me creeped out. I was like, what is going on here?
That one was also very creepy. The first two.
Yeah.
The
It's
people
very mysterious also.
So the characters, where they go in that island plot line and who they interact with, you're like, something is going on, and what is going on? This is strange. Oh man, because I read it. I think obviously you two have read it more recently, so like it's coming back to me as we talk about it. But there's a part that's just when you get some explanations to things, that part is truly horrifying when you realize what's been happening. It's pretty awful. That might be, I mean, the stakes are raised to the point where you're like, is the world gonna end kind of feeling? But strangely, that like smaller, dark plot line is really probably the most disturbing part, I think, of the series. The only thing I can compare it to is for any sorry, this is an out there comparison, but if anybody's watched the Netflix show for Castlevania, there's a plot line in I think it's season 3.
That's the new season.
Is there 3 or 4 seasons? I forget because the first one's so short.
I think there's 3 for sure, and I think the third one is the newest one that just came out.
Okay, so I thought it was 4, but either way, there's a plot line where it's very kind of a similar setup where 2 characters sort of go off to this other thing.
Yeah.
And when you find out what this one person has been doing, you're like, whoa, that's really dark. And yeah, that's the closest. So definitely adults. I think that in some ways, if you like to read YA and you're looking for an adult series, this one has those great character moments like you talked about that I think are going to make you want to keep going. And it's so interesting, but at the same time, there's some really heavy, dark things, and the world building can be quite overwhelming. I know I've seen some people say they've tried picking it up and they're like, I don't know what's happening. And I'm like, I know. I get if you need something, I know how busy our lives can get. And if you need something that's not so demanding of your attention, I completely get that. This is not the kind of series I would want to read other books at the same time.
No, I couldn't. I told Ali this because I'm a multiple books at one kind of person. And for Poison Song, I was like, I cannot read something else at the same time. However, I will say, and we talked about this before recording, if you are in Europe and you can get your hands on the audiobook, do it. Because the audiobooks help you a lot to get through as always, audiobooks help you get through the like boring parts and stuff. But I just felt like the narrator was so good and he kept me engaged the whole time. And the way he narrates things, like he puts emotion, like when the characters are yelling, he yells, so watch out for your ears, but when he cries, he puts so much emotion in the narration that audiobooks just are impeccable. So if you have access to them, definitely use them because they're really good.
Should we maybe give a heads up about accessibility? It's not the easiest for the series. So
can you get it on Kindle now in the US?
I don't know. I checked, and the last time I checked, you couldn't. So I think to get it on ebook and the audiobook, you had to be a UK reader. I'm not sure how certain countries like Australia or other ones, how that affects them, but at least in the US, because I remember saying like, there's no audiobook. And people were like, yeah, there is. It's on Audible. And I'm like, what? And I checked and I'm like, no, it's not. And it's because it's not accessible for some reason in the US. And then a lot of people end up having difficulty getting physical copies as well, which if you can't access the ebook, it's your only other option. So periodically it comes back into stock, usually through Book Depository or Blackwell's, I think is another one.
Also Amazon. Amazon has them as well, but I think Amazon will get them from Book Depository, so FYI.
Right. Yeah, so
they are on Amazon
not the
easily.
Easiest, which is a shame. I mean, I don't understand why. It's a great series, and I feel like you're just sort of setting it up to not be read as well. And I was honestly shocked when I picked this series up because I was thinking, why is nobody talking about this? This is so good. Which it gives you a little bit of like, I discovered it sort of feelings, which is fun when you find those things that other people aren't talking about. But of course, I would rather everybody talk about it because it's, I think, very deserving of that. But it's hard to have that happen when accessibility is so limited.
Yeah. I have like 6 people who've read it, like the 3 of us and 3 other people on BookTube that have read it. Yeah, Patrick, and then Sam from Griff Reads, and I think Adrian has finished it as well. That's it. Other than that, I don't know. And it's too bad because I know that this is the kind of, I think Angela on Literature Science Alliance, she's going to host a buddy read for it now.
Doing a buddy read. I think there's a lot of people that are starting to read it. Like I tweeted about it the other day, and people are like, "Yeah, I'm starting the first one right now," and I'm like, "Well, that's great." Like at the end of 2021 is when I think it's really hitting its popularity.
I think people are finally getting access to it. Like their shipments finally coming in and stuff. I know the author was like, what's going on? Why am I getting all these US readers suddenly interested? So the power of BookTube.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Did you guys want to talk spoilers? Is there something spoiler free you want to say?
I was just going to say, like, Elle was talking about the fact that it's kind of more of a difficult read, and I would say that if you are like a prominent YA reader, this would not be the one you want to start with if you're going to start with adult. It's pretty tough, and I would say like after a few series under your belt, I would start with this one.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think the writing is dense or anything like that. And I know you talked about Broken Earth, and I think that one, from the little I tried of it before we started, I know I was saying I'm gonna try to pick it up again, but I wouldn't say it's as creative in its writing as that one.
No.
And it's not dense. It's not something that you pick up and you're like, I can't even tell what's happening because the writing is so vague or confusing. It's just that there's a lot to it, but the writing itself is pretty straightforward. But there's just so much going on with the world, and like you said, if you're unaccustomed to these really big fantasy worlds, I think it's going to be a little daunting.
Yeah, agreed.
I agree.
Now we can do spoilers because I know.
Okay. Our obligatory half hour is over of non-spoilers. Now we can talk all the spoilers.
I'm excited.
All right, Elle, it's all you. I know you've been like dying.
Yeah, you've been waiting and waiting.
Oh my gosh, so many feelings. Okay, so I know I was talking about there's a moment where a character refers when Tor tells Kirun, is how you said the audiobook pronounces it, right? When he calls him brother is the part that I almost lost it. I was like, oh no, everybody better be okay by the end of the series because this is just devastating. And this is something we didn't even really talk about in the non-spoiler because you almost can't, because you forget that the animal companion aspect doesn't even start really till book 2, but it feels like it's been there all along because of how much. But the growth with sorry, I got so excited that like it's like a floodgate finally opened. But the relationships between the characters and their war beasts, I feel like is when you really see them grow. Which isn't, as somebody who loves my dog of all things, like I get it though, you know, like this. They're so sort of innocent in they're all very their personalities are very distinct. And not nuanced, right? Like one of them's like, I'm the leader and I'm sophisticated. And then another one's like, I'm grumpy. And another one's like, I'm a warrior. And they all have such distinct personalities. And seeing how they grow and how these honestly super flawed humans have to then kind of be the adults to these almost like children. It's just, oh my gosh, I loved that moment. And like, I think that shows how much Tor has grown because he almost doesn't realize how much he cares for other people until you see him have to care about his war beast, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
for sure. And the fact that Vostok is the only one with the memories, the collective memories are only in Vostok. And then you see in Bitter Twins, you see Kirun when they're on the island, and Kirun is just like going around like crazy, like trying to find things and look for things. And you see that him and Sharek really want to have those memories.
Yeah,
but they don't, and it's just so. Oh, I just love it so much. But yeah, Kirun is one of my. I think from all the war beasts, Kirun is my favorite because he doesn't take any crap from Tor. Like to be Tor's war beast must be like such a like frustrating job. Like, oh, you again. You know, like,
I loved when he told Tor stop trying to mate with that other Eboran, because the witch is actually really respectable. She's a respectable warrior. I like her better. And Taurus is like, can we not talk about this, please? I love that. And so I know this is maybe a little bit of a stretch, but the whole search for their memories and who they are and their culture, so to speak, is not a theme I expected to find through these mythical creatures. And I feel like kind of a personal stuff about my family. So on my mom's side, my grandparents are from Cuba. And then on my dad's side, it's definitely Cuba's a big mix as well. But on my dad's side, it was a very big mix, but partly Native American. And growing up in sort of the standard like American life, you sort of feel like you no longer have that culture that your family members had because it's been stripped away and sort of forced to be confined into like, this is how we are as Americans sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And I know that's true in other countries as well, but that feeling of not having that anchor and that history, and again, that culture, I was like, it's so strange that we're finding this through these mythological creatures, but only in fantasy can you find this in like a cat with wings and a dragon with like, you know what I'm saying? Only in fantasy can you have those themes with these sorts of mythological things.
That's such an interesting, I didn't even think of it that way, but yeah, when you're, mixed with different cultures or just even like an immigrant, because I wasn't born here. I was raised here for part of my life, but not everywhere. So I think it's really interesting to discuss that, because I also feel like they didn't really belong with their past or with their current situation. So it's like, you don't really belong anywhere. You're just kind of a mix of different things. And yeah, that was really relatable actually. And I just realized when you talked about it, I just realized that, yeah, that's a really good point.
I think it's also sort of almost a reckoning for especially Tor and the Aborans to find out we're not actually special at all. We were that revelation. It shouldn't have been that big of a deal because in my head, I'm like, yeah, I kind of figured, right? I mean, the fact that you can't really sustain your near or immortality without the tree's sap leads me to believe perhaps you're enhanced because of it. But even just this idea like, oh, we're not special and we aren't this chosen race and everything. I think also something that as you get into adulthood and you start to find out, just you have that moment too where you realize like, oh, my parents are people. They're not superheroes and perfect. Or, oh, my country has done some bad things in its past. Or, you start to discover these things that like kind of, it's almost like when you find out Santa Claus isn't real, and you're like, oh, my whole life has changed. I know it was probably not great to compare Santa Claus to like the atrocities of America, but or other, but it's that feeling of, I guess, coming to terms with the fact that things aren't always what they seem. And again, only in fantasy through a elven/vampire-like race.
Yeah. I think that the theme of belonging is so big in this story because you have what you were mentioning about the war beasts. Then you have the Juralia, who are also all interconnected, and then you have the bonds, like not even just between war beast and let's say owner, but you have the bond between all of them together. How they feel if someone gets hurt, you could feel it. But you also have the fact that Ebora is now welcoming or housing all these people, all the humans, all the witches, everyone is coming to Ebora. And it's just that the theme of belonging and of family and of what does it belong to belong somewhere and belong to someone or with someone. It's just I love that in these books so much. Yeah. It was really relatable because my family also immigrated, and so it's like, like, do you belong here? Do you belong where you were born? Like, it's just all these things, and like how you can choose the people you want to spend your time with, the people that you call family. Doesn't have to be. What was it? Oh, it was Stillian who says this, where at the very, very end, when the queen says, "You swore you broke the bonds with your blood," and then Hestilin says, "But that's not how blood works," and that was also just so beautiful how. The people you love them, whether they are blood family in this case or with Tor and Noon and all those people. It's just you love them and you're there for them. So
Yeah.
Speaking of Hystilian, it's hard to hear her name without gagging. Oh my gosh. Hated her.
Surprisingly, I hated Nanthema more.
Oh yeah, but okay.
I feel like I could understand Hystilian, but Nanthema was like you're just the scum of the earth. Like, good riddance.
Good riddance.
I think because of the War Beast and seeing hers, like the way it was being morphed and twisted into this, and I felt so bad. I know I talked about one of the emotional moments was the calling of the War Beast brother, but the dragon, I'm so glad I didn't listen to the audiobook just for that dragon being so sad.
Yeah.
It made me so sad. And I hated her and also the boy in book 2,
Harry,
that I was not expecting that. I was like, whoa, okay, I guess. And then when his War Beast no longer has oh my gosh. But yeah, Hystilian was like, you're ruining everything. You're ruining everything.
Just die, Hystilian. Yeah, no, she was so annoying. And then how she was creating these, what were they? I don't even know, these weird creatures, and they looked like Thor. And when Thor saw the creature that looked like him, he was like, what is this? Like, gross.
That part freaked me out because when it was introduced, I was like, this is slightly like giving me incestuous vibes, and I don't know how I feel about that. It was just, it ends up not being obviously incestuous, but it was really creepy as well. I was really a little bothered by that part.
Yes, when she's making them all, and I was just like, oh, okay, you're way out. And it's so interesting because I think she's such a fascinating character to follow as far as antagonists go, because one, you see the other characters, or at least Tor, time and time again, giving her another chance. Yeah. And man, in book 2, I was like, come on, just end it. But at the same time, I also appreciate in books when when they aren't like good riddance necessarily so quickly. But with her wanting to belong, but then feeling like she feels abandoned, right? And I think there's this bitterness in her, but at the same time, she still loves her brother, and she still wants like the glory of her people back. So in her own way, she cares, but then she just goes about it. You can see where it's going, right? You can see like the car crash about to happen when it comes to, you're seeing her raise her own War Beast, but you're like, oh, but you're going to raise it and it's going to have to fight the other ones. And I love hers so much, but then I'm like, I almost don't want it to be, it sounds so sad, but I almost don't want it to end up growing up, because then it's where it's going to have to go. What it's going to have to do is that worse than if it were to just have, I know it's not real, but like to say like if it had just died when it was young. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Celephon was a really interesting like look at nature versus nurture. Yeah. And like obviously that's not just the scientific, our reality kind of way, but it was the nature versus nurture in their world, and then the bonds that he still felt, and like the sense of belonging. I think his storyline was heartbreaking, and like it just, every time we read about him, I was like, I hate you, but I feel so bad for you, and I just don't even know how to feel. And that was a very like emotionally confusing part of the book for me.
And even when he does harm the others, it's almost like he doesn't even realize he's doing it. It's like a little kid breaking stuff.
He's dissociating almost from what he's doing.
It's, oh my gosh. I don't know if there was I think there's a lot of books that almost try to tell you like everybody has a chance at happiness, and it's all about how much you put in and I think that his plot line sort of shows like some people are dealt a not great hand and they don't have good choices ahead of them, and their life might not ever really reach a point where it's happy and calm and peaceful. And that's why I think that was the most, did I already say it was the most tragic plot line about a different plot line? I think it was one of the most tragic plot lines. I just felt my heart broke every time. And I think I've already made it clear. I just was so devastated. Everything that happened. I wanted him to live. So I know before we did this chat, we talked about Hystilian, like there being this aspect of why is she alive and someone else isn't, right? I felt that way about her war beast. About Celephon, like why couldn't he have lived? And then he gets his family, and then forget about you. You missed your chance. That's how I felt.
You know what though, for Hystilian, I thought about this because for me it wasn't Celephon necessarily. Now that I've thought about it a little more, I'm a little bitter about Celephon as well. But it was more about Noon because the Tor lived and he like cured himself and she was gone, and it's like that is so heartbreaking. But then I thought about the fact that Hystilian lived, and there was a part in the last chapter where Vintage is writing to her nephew and describing Hystilian as, you know, she's alive, but you know, she's done and seen a lot of horrors of this world. And in that sense, I was like, you know what, killing her or having her die off or, you know, die in the series almost would have been, I don't know, like a peace, like going, like she would be in peace in a way. Whereas now she has to kind of live with all her sins and see all of her sins with the resin, with the damage that's been done. So in a way, her fate of being alive is worse than dying.
And she can never escape what she's done because there's going to be reminders everywhere she goes. So,
exactly, yeah.
But I feel bad for Celephon. I mean, every time I was reading from him, I just felt so sad because he had his family, and that is also something where who do humans think they are? You know, that kind of idea where she took him away. Not because she wanted to; she was also kind of kidnapped by the queen in the beginning in book 1. But who do you think you are to break the bond that he has with his brothers? You know, like why do you get? And Tyranny did the same with Windfall, and then when they come back, the Warbeasts kind of reconnect. And I love when Kirun said at some point, I don't know, it was Windfall, I think, who was in pain, and they all felt it, and they all looking at each other. Oh, but we're all here, we're all fine. And Kirun said, I know we don't think of them as family, but they're still our brothers, and we can still feel their pain. And that was just like, oh, okay, fine. Let's all be sad together.
I know. The poor Warbeasts.
I know.
And so much of it, even though they could talk and they had emotions that were more human-like, it still made me think about the way people mistreat animals, you know, and just like the most innocent of things. And like how, what was the phrase you said? How dare humans or something like that?
Yeah, who do they think they are?
Yeah, I mean, the way that she twists something that's honestly so sweet and pure for her own gain, and the way that she tries to there are some natural things in him, some natural instincts like to be strong and to have this like glorious, you know, path and stuff, and she'll twist that to try to make it go a certain direction that's actually going to cause him pain. And so he's conflicted because he's like, I don't understand, I'm the best, I won, so why am I still so sad? I feel, and it's, oh man. I feel like we could do a whole analysis on their Hystilian and him. Ugh, it's so
the
sad.
The character work is so good. It's so good.
Do you think that there was a step up in books 2 and 3 as a result of, as far as the character work, as a result of having these Warbeasts come in?
Yeah. Yes, but I think it was the Warbeasts and the bond. I think maybe this is a little off. Maybe this is a little too hopeful. But I think because of the bond and because of all the love they shared in the found family, it's like they grew for each other.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, like, you know, codependency and trauma aside, sometimes like loving other people or having people that are close to you, and it kind of helps you maybe look at yourself and see what you're doing wrong and grow a little bit in that way. And I think that was kind of Tor's path, because he was like, crap, I'm really not doing it. So I got to like step up a little bit.
Yeah. I think one of the most emotional moments for me in book 2 was when Eri died, and then Hellkate, who has only ever said Hellkate the whole time in every single book, he one time says Eri, and that was so sad. I had like single tear, you know, like, okay, I'm done. This book has killed me. And
I was not expecting to feel such strong emotions for that moment, because you really aren't with that character for that long. And then I guess you already have these established relationships between these other humans, and you feel bad for this, I mean, kid, even though I do like when they joke every now and then, he's like, I'm hundreds of years old or whatever. But yeah, that moment when it happened, I was like, wait, what? And then I was surprised at how devastated I was, because I didn't think I cared that much until it happened. And that's partly, I think, due to how well the author crafts these relationships. It's not like you just care about this character in isolation. It's that you care about them because the other characters care about them, and then you also care about those characters. And so it's like it's almost like when somebody you care about, something sad happens in their life, even if you don't know who the person is that it's happened to, like you feel sad because of how it's affecting them. In a way, I know it's not quite exactly the same, but yeah, I think the character relationships are just not too many other series have made me feel the way I felt about these characters.
And also,
Yeah, I agree.
Right before Aerie died, there was this like scene of like everyone was like, wow, look at Aerie and Hellkate. You know, they're like small, but they've grown, and like the potential. Like I think it was like, was it Vintage? Someone was talking about how like they could see him like years from now as like an adult, and they have grown, and they're these like badass warriors, and they're glorious. And then like literally 4 pages later, he dies, and you're just like, I mean, it was like an emotional roller coaster. She did that on purpose. I'm a little like mad, but amazed at her writing.
Yeah, respect, but I'm upset. How dare you? I remember reading that second book where I'm like, okay, I feel like our crew needs to win, but they can't, right? Like they can't.
Exactly.
A whole other book. And I don't know what's going to go down. And well, oh man. Okay. So book 2, I think, is the slowest. Because at least book 1 is so intriguing, even though you're not sure what's happening. But book 2, it's like the characters are separated, which is a little frustrating. And you're waiting for them to get back together. And then you have that moment where everybody comes together right in time. But you're like, okay, but this isn't going to be the here comes, like that trope. It's not going to be that. It can't be, right? Because there's no way they can win, because then what's next? So you just have the sense of dread because you're like, I know something's going to go wrong. And I didn't know. I was so scared for everybody. I love when books do that. When you're like, I truly don't know if our characters are going to make it even out of this book. I don't know what's going to happen.
That was the thing. I think I told you guys in our chat that before I started book 3, I said, I have no idea how we're going to do this. There's no way. Like, honestly, if we didn't have the She Who Laughs plot line, which I know we'll talk about, but if that hadn't happened to Noon, and Noon hadn't come to this realization, there would be no way. Like, they would be, like, it was crazy. And I love that, because even as this book was going on, the last one, when I had 100 pages left, so I was like, there's only 100 pages. There's only 100 pages. There's only 100 pages. Oh, please, how's this going to go?
When I know we'll get into stuff with Noon, but when Noon shows up just in time and just chaos. Oh, that's one of my favorite. I was like, yes. And like, okay, she's been away for a while. She's going to come back just in time. And even though you know it, when it happens, it's so satisfying.
Yeah. I love the part too where when She Who Laughs was like, well, just put your heart's desire and I'll take you there. And she says Tor. And because Tor and Kirun and then Vostok are all in the air, she just drops somewhere in the air. And I'm sure that like she had just missed Tor, but really like Vostok saved her. I thought that was like a really heartfelt moment. Because at the end of book 2, I think Tor is about to tell her that he loves her. And she's like, bye, I'm busy. See you later. And then it's kind of like after that, She Who Laughs plotline kind of admits to herself that like, actually, I love him. And then that whole scene happens later on. But we can talk about
when they finally come together. It's so.
Yeah. I think even her, it's almost like she doesn't think she's worthy of being loved. Yeah. I think is, and maybe that's
hello.
But I do like when she comes back and she pretty much just like, not pretty much, she does. She just kisses him in front of everybody. Yeah. And he's like, this is very different. What changed? And yeah, I mean, obviously we know what happens right after that. But that moment where I'm just like, yay, finally, gosh darn it. The two of you are so frustrating, but it sort of makes their story more realistic. Yes. Because it's I mean, they're so aggravating because you're like, can you just accept that you like each other already? Geez. Because even in book 2, there's a part where they're looking for those the like tablet things. That's not the right word for it.
Tablet.
Yeah, and they're looking for him, and she's digging in the mud, and he just thinks like, gosh, she's so annoying. Like because she says something where I don't know if he's trying to be optimistic and then no, I think she's trying to be optimistic and then he's being pessimistic and they're just getting on each other's nerves. And it's so realistic. That's like such a real, and even though I get so aggravated with them because I'm like, can you guys just chill out for a second, please? I think that annoyance over the smallest of things is very realistic.
But then he's also flirting with that other woman on the island, and then Noon you can clearly tell that she's like about it, but like he's like, oh, flirting with this other lady, and you're like, oh gee, no, why is she so dumb? Or Noon is right there.
So dumb. Poor. Sometimes I'm like, come on, man, get some more brain cells, please. Like, wasn't there a part where he had a dream and then he was like, it was a dream, but like I'm pretty turned on. You're like, sorry, come on, knock it off, please. Okay, just keep it in your pants for a second.
That part was kind of annoying. I was annoyed with him in those parts of like being interested in the sister.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What do you guys think about the relationship between Vintage and Chenlo?
I loved it.
Okay, that was it. Yeah, I loved it too. I thought it was so precious because she suffered with Nanthema, and then these two ladies that just like they came together, and I was like, oh, please, you have to be an item, and then they were, and it was so cute.
Man, another part of the book I was not expecting is just when Vintage, like all book one is searching, right, for her lady love, and then that person made me so mad. I hated
Nanthema. I hated her.
Yeah.
I hated her. She's just I get what you're saying now when you were talking about like Histilian, you kind of like her almost more. Maybe that's not the right way to put it, but at least she, in her own twisted way, like kind of was trying to help.
Yeah.
Like, working from the other side. But the other one was just like, get a backbone.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was kind of like, be like a good person. Like it was like, what are you doing? You're running off because you're bored. Like, grow up. You're 500 years old.
And when they went to Tigrish, I think that's what it's called, right? Tyranny was queen when Nanthema was there, and then it was Chenlo and Vintage. They were captured, and then she sees Nanthema, and Nanthema's like, I don't know you. And I'm like,
she's the worst. She's the worst. She's one of those characters where on paper she's not as bad as obviously some of the other antagonists, because is she even really, I mean, I guess you could say she's the antagonist, but not necessarily. She's more of, it's like that. I mean, honestly, it's almost like she left Vintage because she's like, you aged. It's like, yeah, you've been searching for like 20 years. Of course you didn't. She's a human. And then, but she's just like, I don't know. And she's just, the way that she, okay, I got to backtrack for a second. When she goes and sees what happened to her parents and everything, she realized how much time has passed and the way she was stuck. I understand to some degree, like, wow, okay, that would be really tough. And I get where your whole life feels like it's been turned on its head and nobody seems to understand because they've been living it for so long. And then now it's like you woke up and it's 20 years later or whatever the time period was or time frame. But the way that she just decides that nobody else experiences any loss or pain, or that they haven't been struggling all this time. It wasn't, how many years was it? It wasn't 20. How many was it?
I don't remember.
Anyway, but the way that she's just I think she even tells Vintage at one point, like, basically, you can't understand. And it's like, I get that maybe Vintage hasn't experienced this exact situation, but to act like, so I get, for a while she's wallowing, but the way that she would talk to Vintage, it was just so sad. And man, I hated her.
And then you think there's Ari, right, who's carrying his father's bones in a bucket, like, and he was kind to everyone. And then Nanthema is there, like, boo-hoo, I missed 20 years of my life. Okay, fine, it's not boo-hoo, like, as in, I would also be upset, but who gives you the rights to treat everyone else like crap when there's other people who suffer more or the same or less as you, but everyone suffers in their own way? Who do you think? Like, why do you think that you carry the weight of the world on your shoulders? And why do you think you treat other people like trash just because of it? And that was why it was so annoying. Because with Histilian, I think it was Tor. Yeah, Tor, he said at some point at the very end of the last book, he's like, the problem with Histilian was she was the best dreamwalker Ebora ever knew. And in her dreams, she could fix the world. But when she would wake up, she would see that it was trash and she would be frustrated. And this is her way of fixing that. So you can see her motivations. they're bad. What she does is bad. But Nanthema is just like, she's just there and she's annoyed that.
She's just a sucky human. Well, she's not human, but you know what I mean. She's just a sucky person. She's an excuse for a person. She's the worst. Yeah, and oh my gosh, even that breaks my heart too, talking about Hostilian, where the way that because I think a lot of people have that when things are going wrong around them and they're trying so hard to fix it. And that feeling of like, I will literally do anything if I can just make this better. And she kind of sort of, she has that, but the I'll do anything goes in the wrong direction. And so it is kind of devastating, even though there are times where I'm like, okay, you're unforgivable. And then the author would write something else. And I'm like, okay, now I feel bad for you again. But the other, I hated her. I hated her so much. I hated the sister on the island and I hated her.
Yeah.
Were there any men I hated as much as those two? I hated those women. I hated them so much.
There's not that many men, I feel like, that are prominent. You have Bernard, Altair, and Tor, and Eri, and Okar, who's the assassin that then helps Vintage out of jail. With his little sister who then...
What are your thoughts on how they don't really know what happened? Because there's that whole city that Tyranny was sort of ruling over, and then obviously it gets attacked, which that moment is where she kind of gets put in her place, is weirdly like, because neither of them are good, Hostilian and her, neither of them are really very good people, but then to see how much Hostilian like hands it to her, you're like, okay, dang. But when you don't really know, like the assassin guy doesn't know so much about his sister, and then we don't really know what happened to, I always forget how to pronounce her name, but Vintage's past lover. What is it? How is it pronounced again?
Nanthema.
Okay. But both of, when you don't really know if they made it out or not, I think that was, the author left certain things open that were strangely more devastating than if she had given you answers.
Oh, for me, they were dead. I was like, Nanthema's dead. That's the only this can go. She died.
In my canon, she's dead.
Yeah.
Buried by spiders.
And the sister, though, of the book, but the sister where you're like, she's just another one that was led astray, young and shaped by the wrong people. Burns' family is the best. I just want to throw that out there. I don't want to forget.
Burn and Altair are so cute. I think I guess like the kids say shipping. I was shipping them from the first book. I was like, they have to be together. I love them so much.
I will die for them.
And I feel like we needed a wholesome couple after the way that Tor and Noon are constantly like butting heads, and then Vintage. And what her love story, where it goes, ends up being really nice. But she has to go through it to get to that point, right? But those two, so sweet. They're so there for each other. I loved them.
And they suffer a lot because of Burn, when he was captive and got the crystals embedded in him.
Yeah. And then he got captured again. Yeah.
He's like arguably the most wholesome person in the whole series.
Yeah.
He's just so, and I like how Tor is kind of like the big human. Everybody likes him, which kind of makes me not like him. But also he is so nice that I kind of like him too. I like that.
Yeah.
And I liked Tor's relationship with his cousin. I thought that was well done too. And I felt bad for how Hostilian treated him. Where she was like, you're so useless, basically, because he's sort of just been daydreaming for so long, because he'd rather do that than actually like be grounded in reality. But I like that Tor always kind of looked out for him, because that's one of the few things that we see right from the beginning, that we see that more emotional side of Tor through how he feels about his cousin and wanting to look out for him.
Yeah.
I don't blame Tor for wanting to run away from Ibora and kind of have nothing to do with it. It's so tragic. I wouldn't want to sit and watch people all fall to the ground either. So even though he's a character that, because I said earlier that trope of like, I don't want all this on my shoulders, and how sometimes that can frustrate me, I wouldn't want to either. I'd also be like, this sucks. I'm leaving.
Plus, you went to like a Kama Sutra school, which is kind of like arguably better.
Arguably.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I love the way that Noon is just like, stop it. Just stop, okay?
The beginning of the series, when you see Vintage and him together a lot, and he is always doing these things with all these ladies and all that, and then Vintage is just like, it's just like so good. I just like the relationships, how they develop and how they all come to care for each other so much.
Yeah.
And at the very end when they win, then all the witches are like, woohoo, we won, and everyone is like, yay, we won. And then you have just the pack, we'll call them the pack. They're all like crying and just crying for Noon. It's like, oh, okay.
Yep. I know, I feel like we've been avoiding talking about that aspect of the ending because it's so devastating. I want to say before we do talk about, and of course we can talk about whatever else you two would like, but there's criminally few pieces of artwork for the series. There needs to be so much more. But the scene in book 2, when you have Noon going up against Hystilion, and then you have her white war beast and Hystillion's black, and it's like very polar. But then Hystillion's like this gleaming Eburin, and she kind of looks light, but she's actually, kind of on the dark side. And then you have Noon with her fire and stuff. That scene where they're like fighting, somebody needs to do that. It's just one of my, I could visualize it so well. And I'm like, if only I was a more talented artist, I would do the scene because it's so good. And also the action scenes in this series were great. You get so many different kinds too. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so I just had to throw that out there before we talk about more sad things about this series.
There is a booktuber that I know that started reading The Ninth Reign, and he's like an artist as well. And he does like a bunch of kind of like anime style art, and it's actually really cute and good. So it wouldn't like be like a super serious like fan art, but I think it would be like the anime. I think hopefully I can be like, are you gonna draw?
Please.
I've thought about commissioning artwork for this series, even though
why not? Yeah,
because you make people read them too. That's perfect.
Exactly.
I don't know if either of you play Magic the Gathering. It's a card game.
I used to.
I played it once or twice, yeah.
I follow some of the artists on Instagram, and there's one in particular that their art style I just feel like would be so perfect for basically anything in this series. That scene, like I said, in particular, but also that artwork you sent of, I'm going to say it wrong, the Julia, however you say it, but that artwork was so cool. And I need more. I need all the war beasts.
Yeah.
It's strange that, I mean, I guess you kind of have the covers, but it's strange that you don't really have, I don't know if you two feel this way, you don't really have depictions of them, but I feel like I can visualize them very well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Or a map. I know that one of the guys on Discord actually asked Jen Williams, like, hey, is there a map for this? And I think she like drew one and was maybe thinking about releasing it, but hasn't released it yet.
Yeah, this was the art for the Queen.
Yeah.
Very cool. Where did you find that?
I just typed Winnowing Flame art.
Oh, okay.
And then you have like some stuff that's been done that's more like in this style,
Right.
Let me see.
Yeah. This is a maybe silly question, but can you commission art for other series and then share it because I see sometimes artists will say, characters belong to, or I made this piece with permission from. And so I think it depends on the author. Like I've seen a lot of people say they love making stuff for Sarah J. Maas's books because she doesn't try to like claim them. And I think a lot of people end up not making merch for Sanderson stuff because he has Dragonsteel, and they'll be like, hey, I can't sell that. So I wonder if Jen Williams would be like, yeah, everybody go for it. Or if she'd be like, hey, that's mine.
You should do it on your channel. You should do a violin piece with art for this series. Good luck. Quickly, in 5 minutes, just do it.
Oh,
I feel like she's approachable on Twitter, especially. So if you just tweeted at her and asked, like, hey, Jen, I'd love to like get someone to do some artwork. Is it okay? She'd probably be fine with it, but
yeah, she probably would be.
That would be cool. I would love to do that. Should we not keep avoiding talking about the end of the series? How devastating it was.
It broke me. I wasn't okay. I like slept very late that night. It was dramatic.
Yeah. I believe you. Yeah. Go for it.
Let me find my I put it on Instagram, and then I shared my Instagram story to Twitter. Just like it was middle of the night, which isn't that weird for me because I go to bed very late anyway, but still it was super late. And I was like, I don't know what to do now. So yeah, not dramatic because I'm right there with you.
It was just
Here
so
it is.
emotional. The second she sent away Kirun with Tor's body, I was like, this is the end. This is the end. And Kirun wasn't even like, how dare you? Like Sherrick would have done that. Sherrick would have started yelling at her. Kirun was like, he'll be pissed when he wakes up. And she's like, it has to be. I don't want him to die. So yeah.
I have a little sad like seal or something.
Oh,
So sad. Yes. Okay. So there's a part of me that's like, there had to have been another way, like I didn't want to admit that was, I understand why Noon did it because she's like, okay, but if there's a chance that you can live, how much would it have sucked if he had stayed and then died and then she had lived, right? So I get why she did it. But oh my gosh, when the tree Yggdrasil or whatever it's called, when it is coming back and then he has the opportunity to have this cure basically, and he doesn't want to take it. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And just also him, I was like, I don't know who's gonna make it because he sorry, I'm getting all shrill, but him having the crimson flux.
Oh also, no, that was
something we haven't talked about. Him having the crimson flux
yeah.
and keeping it from everybody, and like him looking. There's a part of me that wishes they had both died. Is that really sad and morbid?
No, I wanted that too.
I think that would have brought them peace though, because like now, like I said, like Histilian doesn't get her peace, but she kind of deserves that, and I feel like Tor doesn't deserve like the heartbreak, especially, he was the playboy, like, he's just like doing his thing with all the ladies, and now he like finally is like, oh, I finally found one that I like.
Not and only it's gonna be hundreds of years to find the woman he loves, and then it's like, and she's dead. Great.
I know. It would have been a really tragic way to go, but I almost would have also liked if he had not taken the sap from Yggdrasil and just been like, I've already kind of been preparing myself. But then also the way that would have broke Kirun, that's the other aspect, because we're like, oh, but you have your war beast and it needs you too.
But Vostok, when right before Noon died and she connected with Vostok and she was like saying goodbye, and then Vostok was like, I know, be the brightest weapon, because she called her a bright weapon the whole time, and she's like, go be something, be your bright weapon, our bright weapon or something. And I was like, oh, okay, fine, I'm done.
No, what the heck? I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. I don't like this.
It was so
I need to be like Tor and go buy myself a nice shirt.
And don't drink any sap.
Gosh.
Yeah. It was so emotional. But what did you guys think about the whole She Who Laughs thing?
It's weird.
It's so interesting.
It was one of those like, you know what? This is different, but I'll go with it. I'll go with you wherever, because you've earned my trust. Yeah. But it was strange. And also, I don't know how do you feel about that very, very, very last part? I almost kind of wish that we had just gotten Vintage's letter and that had been the end, because that last part, I'm like, that was a little
open-ended.
So maybe I misinterpreted it, but it kind of seemed like the Earth itself, this planet, had a chance of being restored.
Yeah, that is
right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, can you just bring Noon back? That's how I felt.
Wait, did it?
Go ahead.
Wait, 1 second. Go for it. 1 second.
She's gonna get the book, isn't she?
You
getting the book, Joanna? Don't leave it. No, but it's open-ended.
Wait. When they describe her at the very end. 1 second.
Oh, you're thinking that, but how would that be possible?
Are you wondering if like Noon became her?
Yeah, but
because she took bodies from other people, remember?
But her body exploded, right?
It's She Who Laughs. Do you not think she can just like bippity boppity boo bring it back? I don't know.
Well, maybe she can, because
she's a weird alien godmother.
Noon would like see people who were about to die, right? Who had just died or were about to die.
Yeah.
And they looked normal until that final moment when they would.
Right, but those were people that hadn't exploded, right?
Right.
They were like old or like sick, and she would like take their bodies and live out their like last few days for them so that they wouldn't feel pain.
Joanna's.
I was like, what is
she
going
came
on?
back
Let me
as
see.
a little girl, and the little girl was like breaking down the resin.
It's not noon.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I looked at it multiple times, like, is it her? And I was like, I don't think it's her. I want it to. I think I just have to accept that it's not. It bothers me. It's just I couldn't. She truly did find like the saddest way to. Again, Tor. I can't be upset with her because I get why Noon had Tor live, but also I'm like, I kind of wish he hadn't. Or why couldn't Noon have just lived? You know, I knew she wasn't. I knew. I'm like, I don't think this is gonna go well, and then it didn't, and it was upsetting.
Yeah. I didn't think more people would die.
Like, I don't think it would have been fair to have such a happy ending to the stakes of the series.
Yeah.
I mean, I want Noon to live. I don't want Tor to be like crying with Vintage and like living without her. But at the same time, considering the stakes, considering the arcs, considering everything in the series, I think it would have been a disservice to not have that kind of an ending.
I think that there's a lot of times the more upsetting the ending is, well crafted but upsetting, the better it ends up being overall. So I can wish all day long that it was happier, but I think it's not that I loved it because it was sad, but because it was kind of one of those, it was very bittersweet in a sense, because they did it. They won, but at a cost. And I think that books do that. You can't really beat those kinds of endings, in my opinion.
No, I agree. I think the only way it would have made me even sadder is if all the war beasts had died. Or one of the war beasts.
Oh no.
Like, I was scared. I was terrified. If that happened, I think I wouldn't have finished it. I would have thrown the book away and be like, no.
Yeah. I wouldn't be here today. I would be deceased.
I wondered. Obviously this is just speculation, but they always eventually like they would come back, which means at some point when they weren't needed. But I was like, okay, but they're technically not needed now, but they're still staying. And it's different because like they've finally done it. So now I'm like, do you think that the tree will just continue to make more war beasts and then they can have like their own species? Or do you think, I don't know, like, is it, I forget. You might have to remind me because it's been a little bit, but will it make more war beasts if there's no longer war? If there's no longer the threat?
I'm not sure that I know the answer to that. I don't think I got an answer to that.
Okay.
I don't think that it was obvious. Like, I think it was like when there is a war, the tree makes pods, but I don't think we got like a formula for it.
Which I wanted to ask you guys. So, because there's a lot of elements to this world, right? And that's something I thought was so interesting because the Jurelia went to different planets and tried to do this to all the planets, and then here it just didn't work so well. But then there's also the Aborans who arrived on this planet and then planted it. So it's really like a combination of a bunch of people arriving on one planet and doing their thing, and then boom, we have this, you know? So how interesting is it though that it works together? That when the Jurelia attack, the war beasts come, or did they come all from the same place and I'm just hallucinating? I'm not sure. Maybe I
think the Aborans had no idea what their meddling would accomplish. It was like, let's see how what we do affects different places. But then wasn't it that She Who Laughs was tired, right? She's like, I don't want to do this anymore. You guys are kind of
her fire was powering the spaceship, and then she left them, and then they were stranded, so they all like basically died. All the like quote unquote alien scientists.
And then they finally found a planet that kind of took to their meddling, but then that's what created the tree, isn't it?
Yes, but they were telling their consciousness was telling Tor that this was one of their least impressive experiments. So they were like, yeah, like, but you guys weren't that impressive. So
they were like disappointed that it just made a giant tree.
Yeah, but they had the way I read it, I think they had previous experiments that were much more interesting, and they were hoping that like they would get more interesting, but this one was like not very interesting. But then She Who Laughs left them, and then they died or they transferred themselves somewhere. I don't know.
I think they died, and it was like it's almost like, I don't know if you guys watch Friends, but that episode where Ross is like, and then we can live forever through a machine. That's kind of like the vibe of their
Yeah.
live forever.
Futurama, where they have like the heads and the consciousness on the shelves. No. Yeah, that happens in that series.
It's a very common sci-fi thing, but yeah, I think that's kind of what happened to them. But then the Drlia, so this is I think you were bringing up, they are a separate entity from the Aborans. Were they enemies?
I don't think so, right? I think
there wasn't. We didn't get told that. We didn't get told beyond the planet, really, besides getting glimpses of what the Drellia had done to other planets, but not what the Aborans in detail had done.
Because the Drellia pretty much always ended up destroying everything.
Yeah. Which is what Noon tells her, like, you wanted, but not on this planet, not on my watch. And then
it would be cool if the author wanted to kind of pull a Cosmere-like thing to go to the other planets that the Aborans had gone to.
Yeah.
And I wonder too, like, I mean, I don't know if she's going to keep writing, but at least the open-ended ending gives her the ability to kind of be like, to resurrect the pack, I guess, and have them like explore that idea.
Mm-hmm. Or if she wanted, it could be interesting if it takes place hundreds of years later, and so you see the war beasts or something are still there, but then the characters from before, it's like, okay, their story's over. Kind of a Mistborn era too. Sorry for the Sanderson references here, but kind of like that. Or like you said, where you have a more direct, but man, I don't want to see them again without Noon. I don't want, I don't think I could handle it. It would bother me.
No, for sure. Also, the fact, because now I think I forgot, like the tree that they had on the islands, they had a tree there too, right?
They had roots from the ship, the octopus ship, and those were like the tentacles that were like filtering the blood of the humans. But that wasn't a tree, that was because the spaceship was an octopus.
Oh, okay. Like if you describe this to people, so there was a ship and there was an octopus and then there was a tree.
Fire powered. Yeah.
It was powered by a somewhat alive being.
Yeah.
Called She Who Laughs.
Like, elemental conscious.
Yeah.
Being.
But that was really weird. When we discovered that part, I was like, oh, that's like what they were doing on that island. Okay.
That part is
I wasn't sure if they were going to make it off of the island, to be completely fair. I was like, is this where we end them?
I was in the second book, I was like, how long are we going to be here? And then it got so dark that I'm like, okay, well, I guess the only place to go from here is saving the entire world, because you kind of need something to focus on after how tragic and dark that was. But I gotta say, the very end of the second one was so satisfying when Noon's like, you know what? I'm done seeing people get used like this. And then when she goes to the winery, that was so satisfying.
Yeah.
I was like, yes, good job. And then the opening, the whole third book, the pacing is just fantastic, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The second book was having everybody dispersed was a little aggravating, because I'm like, we spent so much of book one getting everybody together, and now they're all going their own ways, and I want them back.
Also, that's really didn't like the killer starfish. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go for it. Killer starfish?
Yeah, I didn't like the killer starfish. The wild touch starfish. Do you remember those?
Mm-hmm.
Woke up in the middle of the night and there was like all these like glowing killer starfish. I was like, are we just gonna like deface every animal to be disgusting? Like, I can't handle this. I'll never look at a starfish the same way or be able to sleep on a beach. Like, there's no way.
On a beach.
No.
He had Sting Kurun, and then he was oh my gosh, I was like, you better not kill him over a starfish. But it was kind of interesting the way that they would see whales and stuff too, right? That didn't look normal. And then thinking like, wow, we don't even know. There's so many things in the ocean we don't even know what's been affected. But if I'm not mistaken, because reading book 3, I read book 1 kind of further back, and then I read books 2 and 3 basically right back to back. And if I'm not mistaken, book 1 preps you for the island. And right, because there's the references of people going out on ships looking for this place, right?
Yeah.
So I think in some ways books 2 and 3, almost while I was reading it, felt detached or separate, or almost like she's just making stuff up. But I'm like, I'm pretty sure if I were to reread it, I would see these hints along the way that she was preparing us this whole time, which is very impressive. Loved it.
Yeah, because we did a live show, Ali and I, about the first one, and we mentioned that, oh, maybe we will go to those islands because they mentioned them. So I do know that they mentioned it because of that.
Remind me too, then, were the islands, were those moments technically more in the past, or were they present day people trying to get there?
In book 1?
Mm-hmm.
It was just mentioning of like those people who disappeared, and the myth was that everyone had died who tried to go there. Right. And so they didn't even think that the people reached those islands. But it was just like people talking about it, like, oh, remember those peeps? They left.
Okay.
And then, yeah.
I thought there was a moment where it was a captain or somebody being like, yeah, let's go, or something. But again, okay.
No, the clear-sighted who was like the pusher of this, and he took like humans with him too, which is why they even had humans like to feed on. But he took some Aborans, and then when they landed on the island, they saw all the tombstones of all the Aborans, and they just saw Mykonal and his sister, and they were like, where is everyone else? Like, how are you guys surviving? And then they found the village.
But that was book 2 already.
That was book 2 already, yeah.
Right. I was wondering if the ones that were mentioned in book 1 were the people that ended up, like that voyage, if it was those
I think
people.
so.
Okay.
I think, right? I think it was Mykonal's voyage that they were referring to.
It was Mykonal's voyage. Yeah. So he was the like pusher, and he was the one who created the tablets to show them where to go.
Right.
Because he was like the artist. So he was also like, I think, a skilled dream walker. So he was able to put all those thoughts, I guess, or dreams in the tablets. But then I don't know if like the names matched up with the tombstones. Like I don't know if we got all that work, but
that would be impressive.
Him. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I think with book 1, there's so much going on that you're like, is this relevant? I'm not sure. I'll find out, I guess, at some point, right? And then I waited quite a while to pick up book 2, which I forgot to mention. Book 2 also has a great opening of them fighting. Do you remember they're fighting against the Drulia, and like you see them using the war beasts, but the war beasts aren't working well together. And there's like a town that gets, and they don't save it, and like the wolf Jessen wants to try to say anyway. So great opening, but. Because it took a while before I went from book 1 to book 2, that part I vaguely remembered in book 1. And then I was like, I wonder if it's that specific or not. So one of those things that upon reread, I will be excited to see just how much that is there for us to see ahead of time. So innovative.
This will be a fun series to reread, because now you won't be looking at like, what is going on? You know what's going on. You're like, I just want to see it again, you know?
Even the war beasts, how... because I forget when reading books 2 and 3, I'm like, oh yeah, they were like these weird invisible things that turn people inside out, right?
Parasite spirits, yeah.
And you forget.
Yeah, because Noon carried Vostok, which is why Vostok is the only one who has the memories.
Yeah.
It's like so crazy. It's such a crazy series, and it's so different, and it's just so, I don't know, it's just so good. It's just so good. The writing is amazing.
So glad people are reading it.
Yeah, it was just like such a, and you know, like sometimes how you take 200 years to get to a sequel, and you're like, oh, eventually I'll get to it. With these ones, I just really wanted to get to it immediately, you know. I still took some time in between books because they are so
a lot of time between the first and the second one. It was like we took the whole summer, I think, and then we were like,
the
second book now, right?
I mean, so I read the first one, but I just saw it on a list of like greatest fantasy of the year or something like that. I saw it on a list and I'm like, that's a cool cover. And then I read the synopsis. I'm like, okay, that sounds kind of cool. And then I kind of picked it up on a whim and I was like, what am I reading? This is so cool. And then I had so many other books because I think I picked it up in October because I'm like, this seems fitting for fall of last year. And then I was like, I have so many other books because, you know, maybe you are better about picking up what you put on your TBRs. Okay.
No.
We're all in it together. So then I'm like, man, there's so many books I've put on my TBRs this year that I need to get around to in these last couple months or try to catch up. And then I my appendix, I had to have surgery and that put me behind even more. And then so I had started, I think it was literally the night that I was experiencing pain from my appendix needing to be taken out, where I'm like, I thought I was like cramping up from just like laying a certain way reading. I'm like, I'll try laying on my stomach. I'm like, okay, this is kind of better. But I was picking up the second book and then I had my surgery and I was like, well, dang, now I'm way behind and I need to pick up everything else. So I took a long break because I finally picked up the second one, I think over the summer. And I'm like, I forget everything else on my TBR. I already waited too long to pick this one up. I'm going right into the third one, especially because the end of the second one is so good. Yeah. And then, and then just basically marathon. So there's my play-by-play of reading this trilogy. Sorry.
Did you know though that little parentheses? I have huge placebo. How do you say that? Like when someone says like my foot is itchy, then your foot is itchy.
Yes,
I know
what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. Or and I have that. If something is more expensive than you think it's better, even though it might not actually be. That's what.
You having sympathy pains?
Yeah, I have sympathy pains, and so when I watched your video, Elle, where you said about your appendix, I immediately started feeling pain. I was like, I need to go to the hospital now.
No.
So I was like, I told my husband, I was like, do you think I have this? And he's like, no, you don't have anything. Stop it. You just watch her video and I think you have this.
I gotta say too, my symptoms were not the standard because my husband had it when he was a teenager and he had it exactly textbook, which I'm sorry for the side tangent. I'm pretty sure I've seen before that a lot of medical information is kind of, I'm not trying to speak for the medical community, apologies, but I think it's like almost not outdated, but not as accurate as it could be because a lot of times the people who are studied are men. And I think a lot of times they end up being white men also, which obviously anyway, not that it's all that relevant, but so my symptoms were nothing like what they were supposed to be for that. And I even went to urgent care and they basically thought I just had a stomach ache. And I was like, okay, yeah, maybe it's food poisoning. It could be, I guess. And then went home and threw up more. And I was like, whatever they gave me doesn't seem to be helping. And anyway, so even in the hospital, they thought too, they're like, you probably ate something. And they did some tests and they came back. They're like, we got to take your appendix out. We didn't take you into surgery. I was like, oh, okay. So I wish I'd had my book. Maybe, just kidding. I was in a lot of pain. I wouldn't have been able to focus.
Yeah, you wouldn't have enjoyed it.
I'm sorry I gave you sympathy pains.
No, that's fine. It teaches me to not watch people's videos about updates on my health. And I'm like, oh yeah, I care about Elle. I want to know what happened. And then, oh no.
I know, I'm sorry. Yeah. I gotta say, I'd also, that time of year, basically this time of year, occasionally you get allergies and stuff. I crushed a water bottle when I was trying so hard not to cough because I, just had these incisions and I coughed and I fell to the ground and my husband's like, are you okay? And I was like, leave me alone for just a second.
Oh no.
I was so scared to sneeze. I remember what I was wearing the first time I sneezed after my surgery because it was I was so scared to sneeze. But I made it through, obviously. I'm fine.
Well, I'm glad you're fine. I'm glad you're both fine. Glad you're both doing okay.
Oh, mine are fake pains, huh?
I'm glad they were not. Yeah.
So you took a few months between books 1 and 2?
Yeah. What did we read?
We buddy read this.
We buddy read all of them. Once again, I have my.
Your handy dandy. We read Bitter Twins in September, and then we were supposed to read Bitter Twins in August. I don't think that really happened, and then finished the series in September. Yeah.
Well, today, or not today, but yesterday, your time zone's different, but you basically just finished it, right?
Today for me, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was supposed to finish it on Thursday, but then my husband all of a sudden decided to be very chatty these past couple of days. So when I get home from work, usually he's like, you go read. And then this week he was like, I was like, but I have this book to finish.
Spouses and them communicate.
Loved ones. Let me read about other people's loved ones instead. No. So I was like, it's fine. I have the audiobook. I know exactly how long it'll take me. So then I knew to schedule it in. So yeah. But I also got a Switch. And so now I'm but games, but also reading. So
oh my gosh, I've been playing so much Metroid Dread recently, like way too much. A lot. It's really fun. I don't know if you've played it. I'm not a big Switch person. I'm a PlayStation person, so I'm not used to the remote. But very quickly I got into it and I'm very obsessed. And I think I'm almost done with the game already. We just got it. And it's not easy, but it's super fun. I highly recommend it. Not to sound like a snob, but are you pretty good with controls? Or are you one of those people that kind of like look down?
I'm bad.
You're bad?
Good, yeah. I'm bad.
No.
Okay, maybe don't play Metroid Dread then. I feel like you gotta have pretty good. You gotta have good coordination when it comes to the buttons and stuff, and it very quickly progresses and gets more difficult. So as soon as you feel like, okay, I got it, then all of a sudden new stuff is thrown at you. But it's fun.
No, I'm not a gamer. Melvin is, and then he always wants to get into games. I'm like, I want to, but I don't know how to do it. The first time he gave me a controller, I was like, why am I looking at the sky? And that was not so long ago. So
angled it up. Yeah. So since we kind of slightly went off on a side tangent here, but if this were to be adapted, this series, which, oh my gosh, I would love that. Would you want it to be a show? If it were a show, would you want it to be live action or animated? Do you want it to be a set of movies? Would you want it to be a video game? What would you want it to be if it were adapted?
I don't know. It would be a good video game, but that would be my first choice. I think that shows tend to do more justice to the actual books. I think animated would maybe take away, but I would want the graphics to be really well done. Like, I like it has to be live action, but like a really well done live action.
See, I would have said animated, yeah, because of that reason. For that reason, because I could not imagine it live action at all, especially with the Warbeast, the Durelia, the bugs, all that stuff. I couldn't imagine it being live action.
I think I would feel better if it were animated, just because I feel like they have a better chance of it looking good. Yeah. But like you're saying, if it had a great budget behind it, because it would be really fun to see special effects teams try to make the Durelia. And I'm thinking about, I don't know if I know a lot of people hated Man of Steel, the Superman movie, but the way that they kind of like fly in that and how fast the fight scenes go. I feel like something like that for the aerial combat could be really cool.
That would be
but
cool,
I think as of now, I would lean toward animated personally and a show. I wouldn't want them to movies. So the first book could be such a good first season of a show because that opening with Hystilian where you're like, oh my gosh, what am I watching? Yeah. And then just like you're constantly like, dang, what the heck is going on? And the characters are kind of I just need it to be.
And it would be like an awesome ending, right? With all the Warbeasts. Yeah. You're like, what?
Yes.
That would be like, you want to watch the next season. Yeah. Like,
and the budget hopefully would get bigger for the second season. So then the Warbeasts could look good. Because the first season, I almost feel like you wouldn't need as big a pool. You know what I mean? Because it's a lot of just people in the first one. And I think that the special effects wouldn't need to be that intense. Yeah. But yeah, that could. And I could see every episode ending with a dun 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 kind of moment where you're like, oh my gosh, now I have to watch the next one.
Yeah.
It's so good.
If it were made by people that made the Marvel movies, then it would be beautiful and amazing. And, you know, because they have the budget.
But at the same time, it's Disney. So I feel like they wouldn't go as dark as it needs to.
Oh, yeah. They have to go dark, yeah.
But as far as like, the teams that do the special effects and stuff, for sure, it would be really, I mean, of course, those are huge budget movies, right?
Yeah.
So it would look really, really good. But
here, this obscure book, please adapt it. Thank you. For us.
So good.
Yeah.
Just someday, maybe. That would be great. Somebody needs to do it. Sometimes I'm like, can I be really rich for, helping the world, of course, but also so that I can make adaptations of everything that needs an adaptation,
And fan art. Sure. Commissioning fan art as well. That can get pricey.
Yes.
I wish I were I could draw because I love the idea of drawing. Ever since I was a little kid, I was like, I want to draw. And then I'm like, oh, this looks like this is a stick figure because I'm really bad at it. But if I could, I would make so much fan art. I would love that so much.
Oh, yeah.
I like the little one that you sent, the kind of cartoonish one.
Yeah, with Torrin Noon.
June looks so angry and it's hilarious. He's got almost like overalls on. Like, what is she? I don't. Her outfit. For
so
anybody that ends up. Whoops. Sorry. There's the artwork. It's hilarious.
Yeah. For anyone who's made it this far with us, you're a champion. Here's the artwork.
Got through the occasional. You know, I gotta say, because we do World Hoppers videos and stuff, and we go off so much, but we stayed pretty on topic for the most part.
So.
It's a lot to say about this trilogy.
There's a lot that happened.
Are you as impressed as I am that for as intense and out there of a world that she created, that she was able to tell the story in only 3 books?
Yes. Yeah.
Because when I think about where the characters started and where they ended up, I'm like, man, that was 2 books ago. And then now we're here. Very impressive.
Which is why I think that people who, which is why I said in the non-spoiler section, the people who love knowing every little detail about how did they come here, who, what happened, where they're from originally, they'll be like, but I want more. It's not enough. But I do think that it's incredible what she was able to accomplish in 3 books, you know?
I'm also like, I love the titles of the books because they're all like double meanings. Yes. All of them are double meanings. You have like the surface level and you have the like, oh shit level, which is like,
the bitter twins. I feel like the obvious one of the siblings, but then and the poison song with the way Cellophane.
Oh, poor Cellophane. I
want to get sad again.
Yep. Right.
I think.
And how everything.
When I think of Cellophane, I get goosebumps. It's like,
and they're all weapons of a sort. All the titles are weapons of a sort because the 9th Reign is Tor's sword.
Yeah.
And
the bitter twins are Burn. The poison song is like. So I wonder if the poison song could also just mean the way that Noon killed everyone, because it was kind of like orchestrated and interconnected.
Yeah, it's kind of like the weapon of the Drlia in a sense, because they use the war beast against them and they do it through this poisoned song. But then it's almost like Noon sort of, this is a silly thing to say, but it's like she rid them of that poison in a sense, like she purified it, sort of, you know?
With fire. That's like a very biblical reference.
It is. Her green fire. Who was your favorite character out of all of them?
Noon.
I did love Noon.
Yeah. Noon and Kirun. I love both of them.
It's unfair because I asked them, I'm like, I don't want to pick. But I think, is it unfair to say like Noon and Tor together were my favorite?
That's fine.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I know it's cheating. But like, I think it's a tricky balance between having characters that rely on one another to function almost, and then it's like almost too dependent on that person. And that's not really what we had here. I think they sort of in some ways brought out the worst in each other so that they could get to the best parts of each other, if that makes sense. So it's like, I sort of see them together as a unit, even though they're their own characters and they're their own people with their own arts.
Which I love, by the way. Yeah. They weren't, it was never the moment also where you have in other couples where it's like, but I love him, but I love her, so we can't do this. Well, you had it a bit with Tor when he was like, I love her and I want her to die, but that's normal. But you know how often in YA when you have couples and then they, not all YA, of course, but some YA, and then they're like, the world is ending, but I love you and you're so beautiful. And like, come on, guys. You know,
there's things to do.
Yeah.
Well, and it was frustrating because sometimes I just really needed Noon and Tor to talk, but I'm like, they don't really have time. You know, they don't really have time to sit and be like, hey, so I didn't love that you were sort of flirting with that other woman. Because they don't, not only do they not have time for it, but it's like that sort of kind of happens. And then they see the disgusting things that are happening to the people on that island. And it's almost like, yeah, whatever, that other stuff, not really highest priority right now.
No.
Yeah.
I love that.
Series is great.
I don't think there's anything. Did you guys give every book 5 stars? I don't remember.
No.
Wait, did we give the first one 5 stars?
I didn't give every book 5 stars. I gave the first and third 5 stars, but because the second one, like we discussed earlier, had those kind of like slower parts, I was like, I want to give you a 5 stars, but like I can't. Comparatively to 9th Reign, I'm like, it's not the same 5 stars if I give you 5.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that's fair. The second one, I think the second one was the weakest. But I also think it's one of those that each book has its own thing going for it. And we see a lot more of Aldister and, if I'm saying that right, and Byrne in the second one. They actually kind of are pretty important. But as much as I liked them, I did find myself often being like, can we get back to Tor and
yeah.
And it's kind of, I think this says a little bit about the pacing, that it's the kind of book that you could sort of skip over certain characters to be like, I want to go back to these ones. So what's going on with them? And you could do that and it really wouldn't affect, like you could like read certain things out of order almost, as long as it all came together by the end. Which I get is going to happen when you have a multiple point of view story and you need to divide up characters. I get that that's inevitable, but I wish almost there was a way that we could have had certain plots tied together a little more, like a reveal over here affected something over here.
Yeah.
But that's such a minor complaint. But I just to say, I get why you would maybe not love that second one as much as the first and third.
Yeah. But it's overall, a 5-star series.
What was that?
I said, but it's a 5-star series overall.
Yes. Yeah. That's what I was about to say. As a series, way up there.
What were your favorite books? Because I know obviously like, you know, Poison Song is my favorite, but I just wanted to know what you guys' favorites were, if there is one.
I mean, it's hard to beat a really good ending.
Yeah.
There's like the discovery of everything and the getting to know the characters in the first one. So I just like I couldn't choose a favorite character. I feel like I can't choose between those two. I mean, probably Poison Song. It was just so the emotional hits were amazing, but everywhere there was just like the most minor of things. And I know I keep going back to that moment where Tor calls Kirun brother, but just the littlest, and like him with the Crimson Flux, where like everything he's doing and everything he's saying, and that the third one, it was not actually that hard. The third one's my favorite too.
Yeah, it's also my favorite. I think the pacing, which we discussed earlier, it's the best one. Like of the 3 books, it's the one that's better paced in my opinion. And you already care about these characters so much. Like everything that happens, they can stub a toe, and you're like, oh no, don't stub your toe, you know. And it's like you love them so much.
Sympathy pains,
right?
Yeah, exactly. My hurts. So no, I love that third one, and I always wanted to be reading it. Always. I generally don't listen to adult science fiction fantasy on audio, just like alone. I always do immersion reading, but because I cared so much, I was in the car. I would put it at like 1.5 speed, and just like, you know, at 6 a.m. in the car, like, oh yeah, okay, this is cool. And like, I was really interested in what was going on all the time. I always wanted to be listening or reading it. So
that's actually an interesting thing to point out. I kind of like to marathon books when I do that with a lot of my hobbies, where I'm like, okay, right now I want to read and I want to read for hours. I'm not one of those people that's like, I'm going to read 20 minutes here and 20 minutes there. So I usually, when I sit down to read a book, I can usually get through it really fast, but I almost didn't want to get through this third one. I was like, I kind of want to stop at some point. Like, I'm going to pretend that the Drulea just left and that we're where we are right now. And like, just everybody's alive right now. And I almost don't want to keep going. But I wanted to read it slower. And I don't usually do that. It's not that I want to get through books fast. It's that this one I actively would like want to stop and process what's happening and feel those emotions that it was evoking.
It made you want to savor the series, like really get into it.
And you knew it was going to be. I knew it because of you that it was going to be painful. The two of you saying that the ending was painful. So when we ended in a happy moment, like Noon coming back or the Julie leaving, I was like, okay, pause. Let's do something else. Let's watch Netflix or so, because this is a great point to keep it. You
know where you could pretend the book ends is when Noon comes back and she blows a bunch of them up, and then her and Tor are reunited. You can be like, that's the end of the book. And you don't have to like believe that they're gonna come back.
But the series ends. Cellophane is alive. Everything's perfect. Yep. This is the end.
That's like the alternative ending.
Exactly.
Yes, a very good series. I'm so glad that you both read it.
Yes, me too. Any final thoughts? This is a dangerous question. Any final thoughts?
I think I should not add anything else. So we're not here for another hour.
just amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved it. I'm so glad I picked it up. It's just like it's gonna be in my favorites of the year for sure.
Yeah.
In my favorites of all time for now, at least, depending on what comes in the future. But
Yeah.
I know it's so good, and it will also be tied with these things. Like it's a series that I buddy read with you, Ali, and now we all discussed it here. And there's so many good memories now attached to this series that it will always. And that's why I love having BookTube and having bookish friends, because there's the book, and there's the experience of reading it and talking about it and gushing about it. And no matter what happens, like even if this book one day becomes as popular as the Stormlight Archive, we'll be like, but we, way back when we talked about it and we loved it and stuff, and it's like, yeah. I love it so
I think that's true, and I think a lot of times, BookTube, as is the case with any kind of like little community online, it has its moments where people start to, I don't know, feel like, oh, it's just not that people are over it, but just that there's certain aspects, of course, that are positive and negative about anything. But I feel like reading this book and getting to gush about it and just come together and talk about a book for almost 2 hours, like isn't that like why we love reading? We can come together and
so,
it is.
Thanks to Jen Williams for giving us that.
Yeah, that's what you need to remember, I think, in those moments where, when your number's bad, when your channel isn't growing, or your videos are performing poorly. And then you're like, but there's these moments. These moments are worth, like, I wouldn't want 100,000 subscribers and not have these moments, or 1 million subscribers and not have this. I'd rather have a small channel, small views, and have these amazing moments. As like, it's everything. And some of my friends in real life know that I have this channel. And then I tell them about our live shows and stuff. They're like, but that's so cool. So you get to talk to other people who have loved the same book as you. I was like, yes, imagine.
I know. I think a lot of people know that I'm really good friends with Joana, and we met because of BookTube. We live in the same state, and we're like best friends now. And I always thought it was cheesy and cliche and untrue when people would say I've genuinely made friends from BookTube, and I was always like, okay, like, oh, all right, I'd kind of scoff at that. But I don't think at any point in my life ever had better friends, and it's really amazing that it comes through just something like this, like us bonding over books. And then it's like having a prompt or a discussion point to lead you into getting to discover more about a person, which is great for people like me who get very anxious, and I'm like, oh no, people, I have to talk to them. But when I can just talk about a book, you know what I mean? It's easy. It's much easier. So it sounds so goofy, but yeah, I love it. And to what you were saying about the fact that like you'd rather have moments like these than millions of subscribers or something like that. I think it's kind of inevitable because there's not that many people that are that interested in books on the internet. But at the same time, I just want to say I 100% agree. I know when I was reading this, when I read the first one, I'm like, nobody's heard of it, but I have to do a review for this book. I don't know if anybody's going to watch it, but this book was so good and I need more people to pick it up. And then when I read the whole series, I was like, I've talked about that first book so many times. I've mentioned the second one in probably a couple of videos. I was like, but I need to do a series review now because I need to talk about this. And I didn't do spoilers because I'm like, nobody can watch the spoilers, but I enjoyed not only getting to express my thoughts, but now I get so excited when people tag me and they're like, I just picked this book up and it's so good. And I'm like, I know it's so good. When Jen Williams, the whole like, why are so many people asking about this all of a sudden? And Alan from Library of Alexandria is like, I think Elle had something to do with it. I was so embarrassed because like, I don't know. I was like, oh my gosh. In a sense, you almost, because BookTube's so small, you don't realize the effect it can have for these books and these authors and stuff. But that was a kind of surreal moment. Anyway.
Yeah, that I believe you. That must have been crazy.
Talking about how fun the series is and the experiences it brings.
It was amazing. And I was happy for you and Jen both to like have helped each other out in that way. I was like, I mean, I can see why it might be a little embarrassing, but at the same time, I was just really happy for both of you. I was like, that's a really great outcome to like a review video that you weren't sure people would click on. And now look, you've started like a movement. And it's not like an empty movement. It's like, actually, it's a really actually good book. Like, you're not wrong. So
yeah.
Thanks.
No, but that's the thing. If you hadn't talked about it, we wouldn't have buddy read it. And Ali and I became friends, a year ago. And then we decided to buddy read this one together. And like, would we have talked as much probably about other stuff because we both love Sarah J. Maas, for example. But like, this is something that, and what you were saying about your friendship with Joshana, like my best friends on a daily life in my daily life are Sophia from Sophia's Thoughts, Ali, Abby, and Vish. I talk to them all the time. And it's like because of these things, you know, and then, oh, did you see Elle talked about this book? Let's read it. Like, I'm trying to read Fireborn with Evie still. It hasn't happened yet. But eventually, it's just like that. The fact that I love that the booktube community is small enough that you can just do these kinds of things. Whereas, you know, if in the makeup community, it's just like insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that we have this. It's just so good.
The connections. Like when you love a book, even though booktube is small, you're not going to know everybody, right? But then sometimes comments will be like, do you know who this person is? They read it and they love this book too. And then you're like, I don't know who that is. And then you look and you're like, oh, this person seems pretty cool. And then you DM them like, hey, I also really liked that book. And I know there's been a few times where Patrick is one of the only people who's read something I've read. And I'll be like, Patrick, I need to talk to you for a second. Or I'll send him a review and I'm like, look at this 1-star review. How does this person think this? You know, that kind of thing. But I want to add too that I think the nature of the internet and just how people are, that a lot of times the negative attracts more attention than the positive. Yeah. And not trying to put down people who do rant reviews or act like people like are forcing themselves to hate books or anything. And also I understand that people should be honest and express how they actually feel. And if that means leading to a funny rant, then that's, you know, that's going to bring other people joy. But it's kind of fun that loving a book led to other people being like, I'm interested in this book. And then people talking to each other and then forming friendships through that. And then Jen Williams getting more attention for this great series. And it's like, it's nice when it's a positive thing that gets bigger, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I agree. But even those rant reviews do have their place. Like, you know, the Dune reviews, as long as it's not a rant review for the sake of ranting, I think it's still a really valid review. I would still want to know like those points because, you know, you read it from your own biased perspective of life experience, and someone else is going to read it from their like biased life experience, and that's going to bring a new point of view, which is why I love doing like live shows. I love doing these like recordings and discussion videos. Like even though they don't get as many clicks as like oh my gosh, the 5 best like fantasy books of all time, it's still really important to talk about all different views. But it's great when we all agree on loving it.
I say this now, but when hopefully someday this series will get big enough that there will be people that don't like it, which will hurt me. And then I'll be like biting my tongue. Like, I remember the days when everybody liked it. Like, you're just disliking it. Cool. And to be the dissenting opinion, and which won't be true. There will be people that are being honest, but it's going to be hard for me to let go of this little moment we have right now. We're kind of in our bubble where we really like this series and a lot of people like it. And it's kind of like our thing, you know, when it does hopefully get more success, of course, that means there will be the percentage of people that dislike it will go up. And I have a hard time accepting that will happen, but I'm sure it will.
Be prepared to have nasty comments on this video in like 5 years.
That's okay. Honestly, like this is the moment that's golden, and the people that leave nasty comments, you know, that we're always going to have trolls, but this is the moment that like for me, I'm going to remember when I look at like my shelves and I see the 9-3, which is behind this chair, but I see this series, I'm going to be like, oh, we did that live show or that discussion video and it was awesome.
It will always be special. Yeah. But you know, something that's sad is, so a few weeks ago, I was in Paris, and I don't know if you've heard about Shakespeare & Co. It's a bookstore, and it's really beautiful, and it's kind of old. Yeah, you've been there. I remember we talked about this. We need to, at some point, you all need to come to Europe, and we all need to do a trip together, and it will be fun.
We can meet in Paris. I'm down for that movie, you know, like.
Yep. You bring Luna as well, because I need to put my face in her fur, because it just looks so soft.
She's so cute.
Yeah, she's so cute. But I was there in the store, and I'm very bad, like URL, at making. I'm not bad at making friends, but I'm kind of bad at it. Like I feel very self-conscious. I'm like, oh, I don't know what to talk about with these people. So I was at the store, and I was with my sister-in-law, and there was this girl, and she was trying to convince her friend to buy Stranger Dreamer. And she's like, no, but it's so good. Let me read you the back of the book. And she started reading the back of the book, and I was like, I'm really sorry to interrupt you, but she's right. It is a very good book. You just need to buy it. And then the friend was like, right? And like we started talking for like 1 hour almost in the store. She's like, what else do you recommend? And she just started writing everything down, and it was so awesome. And then my sister was like, how do you make friends so easy? I was like, because it's books. Any other topic, I couldn't do it. But like this was like, I was like, have you read Sanderson? She's like, no. I was like, yeah, okay, then start with Sanderson, obviously. And then like I was doing this list, read Abercrombie, read this, read these. Like I did a bunch of different stuff. So like whatever works, you know. It was so fun. Yeah. Books.
It is fun. I love it. Yay, BookTube, and yay, the Winnowing Flame Trilogy. Yay.
And thank you, ladies, for joining me today. I really appreciate the discussion and the love and just the awesome, happy memories we've made and your opinions and such. So obviously, if anyone has any other opinions, leave them in the comments. We love hearing about new folks reading the series and what you'll think of it. And yeah, give obviously love to Joanna. And I mean, everyone knows Elle. So if you don't know Elle, obviously give love to Elle, but everyone knows Elle. And obviously,
sorry, I'm sure if we looked at the ratio of like talking, it would be mostly me.
But you have been holding it in for so long.
Yeah, you have.
You know, I can't even use that as an excuse because when we did our Vin video, it was the same thing. I had to talk about these things. So,
but it's awesome. It's like your excitement comes through.
Yeah,
that's good. Hopefully people are like, Jesus, that girl ever stop talking?
I don't think they think that.
That's why I have a channel, right? Because I don't run out of things to say about these books.
Which is great. And if you want more content, you can go to Elle's channel because she definitely has more Winnowing Flame content.
I want there to be more. Maybe I will try to do some it'll be, by the way, speaking of things that like you do just to do it because you like it, nobody's gonna like, when I did those violin videos for books, I'm like, this is so niche. Like nobody's gonna watch this. But it's like, it's really fun to get to bring that to life through another hobby. And so maybe someday I'll do it for this. It takes a long time, but I want an adaptation and I need somebody to make an amazing illustrated edition of this trilogy. And like the naked hardbacks could have the war beasts like ingrained.
Like embossed with foil. And then they can have like a reversible dust jacket with like the war scenes.
Oh my gosh. We used to do this. Please, Fairy Lou or
three of us do this.
Illumicrate does some of the best, Oh, so good.
Aren't you a rep for Illumicrate?
Yeah, at
you are a rep, right?
Hey, Illumicrate, can you please
do it?
This series?
Yeah, do it.
That'd be so cool. I mean, I don't have any say in anything. They just send me the boxes. But if I did have a say, or once again, if I had not only money to help the world, but money to invest in things I like, I would commission some really talented artists to do illustrations and a really great book design. It'd be great. There needs to be really beautiful hardcovers. These paperbacks are gorgeous, but also I want more editions. Maybe I'll see if there's more editions for this series.
I wonder if it's been translated or so. I don't know.
Because it's not that accessible in the US. I mean, anyway, bringing everything full circle. Anyway. Otherwise,
thank you, ladies, for joining me. And like I said, you should check out Elle and Joanna. And you probably know both of them, but definitely check them out if you don't. And thank you for joining me and talking about this wonderful series and everyone else for watching.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us. Bye.
Bye.